To come tonight. Mother doesn't want you here. That was the text message sent by my husband on the night of the housewarming party for my mother-in-law's new estate. I replied briefly, "Understood, darling." They had ignored and humiliated me, so I decided to make them regret it. I canceled all payments and clawed back every single cent. An hour later, they started calling me like lunatics. Zilia slowly massaged her temples. On the laptop screen in front of her, a string of numbers indicated that a massive sum had just left her account. It was the final payment for a luxurious mansion located in Tuxedo Park, one of the most exclusive residential enclaves in Atlanta. That house wasn't for her. It was for her mother-in-law, Mother Eudora. Zilia let out a long sigh, closed her laptop, and leaned back in her leather executive chair. As the CEO of a successful high-end fashion export firm, Zilia was used to making multi-million-dollar decisions. But this decision was different. There was a bitterness that wouldn't wash away. It had all started 3 months ago. Her husband, Tavarius, had come to her with a pitiful look on his face. Tavarius was a good man, or so she thought. But unfortunately, he was far too submissive to his mother's will. That night, Tavarius sat next to Zilia, took her hand, and began the persuasion tactics Zilia had heard far too many times. "Baby mother is getting old. She says her lifelong wish is just to live in a decent house for the years she has left." Zilia remained silent. The word decent, the standard of decent that Tavarius and Eudora spoke of, was highly relative. The home Eudora lived in now was already good enough, a spacious condo in Buckhead. But Eudora always felt she was lacking something. Eudora had never liked Zilia. To her, Zilia was just a common woman who had gotten lucky in business. Zilia's status as a mogul, far from being a source of pride, became an object of jealousy. Eudora believed that, as a daughter-in-law, Zilia should entrust all her earnings to her husband and mother-in-law to manage. Naturally, Zilia refused. She had put blood, sweat, and tears into her business and wanted to use that money only for transparent purposes. But Tavarius was her weakness. "What house are we talking about, honey?" Zilia asked in that moment. "You know, the one over in Tuxedo Park. Mother went to see it. She says the air is cleaner there and it has a garden." Tavarius replied, avoiding Zilia's gaze. Zilia almost choked. Tuxedo Park was one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Georgia. She knew the market prices there perfectly. It wasn't a simple house. It was a small palace. "Tavarius, that price is absurd. We're in the middle of a business expansion." Zilia tried to negotiate. "Please, Zilia, just this once. For my mother. I promise that after this, she will never ask you for anything else. I feel so ashamed as a son not to be able to make my mother happy. Just this once." Tavarius began to use his main weapon, guilt. And as always, Zilia softened. She loved Tavarius and always held on to the hope that her sacrifice would finally make Eudora accept her. Thus began the process of buying the house. Zilia took care of everything. It was she who negotiated with the luxury real estate group, she who prepared the mortgage documents in her name, and she who paid the down payment, which amounted to a considerable percentage of her personal savings. Tavarius and Eudora only showed up to sign the initial contract, take photos for social media, and choose the paint colors. Throughout the process, Zilia felt like an ATM with legs. Every time they met, Eudora didn't ask how Zilia was. The questions were always the same. How is the house coming along? When will they finish? Why are they taking so long? "Oh, Zilia, I heard the catering for the housewarming party is very expensive. You can afford it, right?" "Don't embarrass me in front of my friends from the club." Zilia bit her lip. The housewarming party. That was what Tavarius and Eudora had been planning all week. Tomorrow was the big day, the day they would officially unveil the new house. Ironically, Zilia, who had paid for the house in its entirety, was not allowed to participate in the party planning at all. She only received the expense reports. Every day, Tavarius sent her a list of invoices: luxury catering with Wagyu beef sliders and imported truffles, floral decorations flown in from Holland, invitations printed on high-quality cardstock for Eudora's high society friends, and Zilia had no choice but to wire the requested amounts. That night, Zilia returned to her own home, a penthouse in Midtown Atlanta. In the living room, Tavarius and Eudora were laughing and chatting while looking at fabric swatches for the service staff's uniforms for the party. Zilia had no idea who these employees were. "Ah, Zilia, you're home," greeted Tavarius with a certain awkwardness. Eudora only glanced at her sideways and went back to focusing on the fabric catalog. "Yes, honey. Are the preparations going well?" Zilia put down her briefcase, trying to smile. "Of course, everything is ready. Tomorrow will be the best party in Atlanta," Tavarius exclaimed. "I'm glad," Zilia said softly. "Oh, Mother Eudora, I just paid the rest of the amount for the house. It is now completely ours." Zilia expected at least a word of thanks. Eudora's reaction was unexpected. She didn't smile. She just nodded briefly. "Ah, good. It's what you had to do," she said brusquely. "Tavarius, I think this gold is more elegant than the silver. My guests will be impressed." Zilia felt as if a dagger had been driven into her heart. It's what you had to do. So all her efforts, the millions of dollars she spent, were considered just an obligation. Tavarius saw the change in his wife's expression and tried to shift the atmosphere quickly. "Of course, Mother. Let's do it in gold. Zilia, are you tired? Go take a bath." It was Tavarius's gentle way of excluding Zilia from the conversation. Zilia nodded weakly and headed to her bedroom. She felt stupid. Why was she still expecting something? Why was she trying to buy the recognition of someone who clearly hated her? She left the bedroom door ajar while changing clothes. She needed to catch her breath before facing them again. It was then that she heard Tavarius talking on the phone. Eudora seemed to have left already, and Tavarius was speaking with her again from the living room. Tavarius's voice was low but clearly audible. "Yes, Mother. Everything is sorted." "Zilia just transferred the entire remaining balance," Tavarius said. There was a brief silence. Zilia could only hear Eudora's faint voice on the other end of the line. Then Tavarius laughed. "Yes, Mother, don't worry. Our plan is safe." "Good. Are you sure she made the payment today? You know what you have to do after that?" Zilia's heart seemed to stop. "Our plan is safe. What do you have to do? What did all this mean?" The ominous feeling she had been forcefully ignoring reared its head again. She tried to convince herself she had heard wrong, that it was just paranoia. But Tavarius's tone, the conspiratorial tone full of secrets, gave her goosebumps. Right after all her money was transferred, what was this plan they were talking about? The next day was D-Day for the inauguration of Eudora's house. The party was scheduled to start at 7:00 p.m. Zilia woke up with mixed feelings. The phone conversation from last night between Tavarius and Eudora wouldn't leave her head. "You know what you have to do?" That phrase repeated like a broken record. She tried to ask Tavarius in the morning, but her husband left the house early. "Honey, I have to go early to help Mother with the preparations. You take care of work at the company." "Don't worry about anything," Tavarius said, putting on his shoes hurriedly. "Tavarius, I'll go with you. Can I help check the catering or something?" suggested Zilia. Tavarius's steps stopped. He turned around with an indecipherable expression. "No, Zilia. There are already a lot of people there, and it's chaos. You'll just get tired. You are the protagonist of this evening. Just come later, look beautiful, and that's it," he said. Then he hurriedly kissed Zilia's forehead and left. Protagonist? Zilia almost laughed bitterly. What kind of protagonist knows nothing about her own party? What kind of protagonist pays for the entire party but doesn't participate? Throughout her time at the office, Zilia couldn't concentrate on work. She looked at the party dress hanging carefully in her private office. It was a gown she had designed herself, an elegant piece of rose gold brocade with a silk shawl of the same tone. She wanted to look perfect, not for Eudora's friends. She ran her fingers across the fabric, imagining how the dress would shimmer under the chandeliers. For a moment, she allowed herself to dream. Maybe tonight would be different. Maybe, in front of all those people, Eudora would finally have to acknowledge her. At 5 p.m, the sky over Atlanta was still a hazy blue. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Zilia's corner office, turning the sequins on the dress into 1,000 tiny stars. She checked the time, shut down her computer, and began to gather her things. Her phone buzzed. She expected it to be Tavarius, maybe reminding her of the time, asking if she was on the way. Instead, the preview on the screen made her stomach drop. Tavarius, don't come tonight. Mother doesn't want you here. For a second, Zilia thought it had to be a mistake. Her finger trembled as she unlocked the phone and opened the full message. To come tonight. Mother doesn't want you here. It'll be awkward. Better if you stay at home and rest. I'll explain later. Love you. The world around her seemed to blur. The hum of the air conditioner, the distant chatter from the design department, the clack of heels in the hallway, all of it faded into a dull buzzing in her ears. She stared at the words. Mother doesn't want you here. She read them again and again as if they would rearrange themselves into something less cruel. Her vision prickled. She swallowed hard, forcing the tears back. She would not cry at work. Not here, not in the place she had built with her own hands. After a moment, her fingers began to move over the screen. Zilia. Understood, darling. That was all she wrote. No argument, no begging, no why. She pressed send, set the phone down on her desk, and let the silence settle inside her like ice. So that was their plan. They had needed her until the last payment left her account. Until the house was fully paid off, until the caterer, the florist, the event planners had all received their money. You know what you have to do after that. Now she knew what that was. Cut her out. They hadn't just wanted her money. They had wanted her to buy them a crown and then watch from far away while they wore it. For a long minute she sat perfectly still. Then slowly, something in her hardened. The humiliation burned, yes. The rejection stabbed. But beneath it, deeper than the hurt, another feeling began to rise. Cold, clear anger. Not the wild kind that makes you scream, the sharp kind that makes you think. She turned the phone over so the screen faced down, stood up, and walked to the window. From 30 floors up, the city looked small. Cars were toy-sized, people were dots. Somewhere out there, in Tuxedo Park, Eudora and Tavarius were probably laughing, decorating, feeling untouchable inside a house they believed was theirs. Zilia exhaled slowly. Then a thought came, quiet but precise. Whose name is actually on that deed? She knew the answer. The bank had insisted that the primary borrower be the one with the strongest financials. That was her. The mortgage documents, the wire transfers, the closing statement, all of those files stacked neatly in her digital archive, bore one name as owner and guarantor, Zilia Amara Collins Brooks. Not Eudora, not Tavarius, only her. A second thought followed, sharper. Whose account did all those payments come from? Again, hers. Every caterer, florist, and rental company had her corporate card on file. Every vendor contract listed her as the financially responsible party. They needed her so badly that they had forgotten something very important. She was not just their personal ATM. She was a CEO who understood contracts, cash flow, and how to pull money back. Her lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. They thought they could simply cut her out? Fine. They might have the guest list, the decorations, the music, but the house still belonged to her, and the money they thought was safely spent, that could move. Zilia turned away from the window and sat down again. She opened her laptop, the familiar glow washing over her. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, logging into the secure portal for the bank that held the mortgage and the escrow account. She pulled up the dashboard. There it was, the large disbursement that had gone out earlier that day to the closing attorney's trust account. Final payment. Status: pending final settlement. Her heart beat faster, but her mind stayed cool. She called her personal banker. "Ms. Collins Brooks," the woman answered almost immediately. "You're working late today." "So are you," Zelia replied, forcing her voice to stay even. "Listen, I need clarification on a wire you processed this afternoon, a large one to Grant and Winter's closing services." "Yes, ma'am. That was the final disbursement for the Tuxedo Park property, correct?" "Is it fully settled?" Zelia asked. "Or still reversible?" There was a pause. "Well," the banker said slowly, "according to our records, the funds left your account but are still in the escrow trust. The final deed hasn't been recorded yet. Why do you ask?" Zelia's jaw tightened. "Because I want those funds pulled back," she said. "Immediately." "Pulled back?" The banker sounded startled. "Miss Collins Brooks, that's highly unusual. Is there a problem with the property?" "There's a problem with the people," Zelia answered. "The contract is in my name. The funds are mine. Until the deed is recorded, I have the right to stop the deal, correct?" "In principle, yes," the banker admitted slowly. "There may be penalties depending on the contract terms, but legally you can instruct us to recall the wire if the closing attorney hasn't disbursed to the seller yet." "Good," Zelia said. "Consider this my formal instruction. Recall the wire. Freeze all outgoing payments related to that purchase. I'll have my lawyer send a written notice within the hour." Silence again. Then, "Yes, ma'am. I'll escalate this to our transactions team right away." She hung up and immediately called her attorney, the one who normally handled her business acquisitions. "Zelia, is something wrong?" he asked. "I need to stop a real estate closing," she said crisply, "and I need airtight legal footing to do it." She explained the situation, stripping away the emotion and giving him only facts: the wire, the status, the clause in the contract allowing withdrawal if certain conditions weren't met. "And have those conditions been met?" he asked. "They haven't even been considered," she replied. "The house was supposed to be partially titled to a family trust we discussed. The paperwork was delayed. The only recorded owner would have been me. That's a unilateral change from what my husband and his mother presented to me. I'm withdrawing consent." Her lawyer whistled softly. "They played with fire," he said. "All right. I'll email the closing attorney and the bank within 30 minutes. They won't dare release a penny with that on record. You may lose your earnest money deposit, but the big chunk, we can save it." "Losing the deposit is cheaper than losing my dignity," Zelia said. After the calls, she went through her emails like a storm. Catering contract? She opened it. Cancellation clause. Harsh, but possible. She sent a notice of termination citing misuse of her name and misrepresentation of the event. Floral designer, same. Furniture rental, done. DJ, lighting, valet service, all of them received polite, extremely formal emails from Zelia A. Collins Brooks, CEO, informing them that she was rescinding authorization to charge her accounts for the event scheduled that night at the Tuxedo Park address. Some of them replied almost instantly, confused, asking if it was a mistake. She confirmed it was not. By the time she finally closed her laptop, her pulse had settled into a steady rhythm. She was no longer trembling, no longer trying to convince herself she deserved to be in a house she had paid for. She was simply done. Done buying people. Done begging. Done handing over her hard-earned money to those who saw her only as a wallet with legs. Her phone buzzed. For a second, she thought it might be Tavarius changing his mind, sending some weak apology, begging her to come anyway. Instead, it was a notification from her banking app. Alert. Outgoing wire transfer reversed. Alert credit. Large amount returned to account. She stared at the numbers. The massive sum that had left her account earlier had just come back, like a boomerang. She leaned back in her chair and laughed once, softly. No triumph, just disbelief at her own nerve. Then she grabbed her handbag, picked up the dress bag from the coat rack, not because she planned to wear it tonight, but because she refused to leave it hanging there like a forgotten dream, and left the office. Outside, the sky was beginning to darken. Streetlights flickered on. Somewhere across town, caterers were checking their bank accounts and frowning at failed charges. Florists were calling Eudora's assistant, saying the payment had bounced. The event planner was probably standing in the middle of a half-decorated ballroom, staring at her tablet in horror as every automated debit showed declined. Zelia drove home, humming softly along with the radio. She was in her kitchen, brewing tea in comfortable silence, when her phone finally exploded with notifications. First a call from Tavarius, then another and another, then Eudora, then the event planner, then the banker from the mortgage department, no doubt trying to understand why millions of dollars had suddenly been yanked back. She watched the screen light up. Tavarius, Mother Eudora, Tavarius, unknown number, event planner, and set the phone face down on the counter. For the first time in a long while, she didn't rush to answer. She took her time, poured her tea into a mug, and carried it to the living room. Only when the ringing started again, more insistent than ever, did she allow herself a small, satisfied smile. An hour ago, she thought, they didn't even want me in that house. Now they suddenly can't stop calling. She took a slow sip of tea, letting the warmth spread through her chest. Let them panic. She had spent years letting them treat her like she was lucky to be there. Tonight they could learn what it felt like to be the ones left out in the cold. The phone wouldn't stop buzzing. It rattled against the marble countertop like a trapped insect, lighting up again and again with the same two names. Tavarius, Mother Eudora Zelia. Let it ring until it stopped. Then it started again. She took another slow sip of tea. On the third round, she finally picked it up. Not to answer, but to switch it to silent. She put its screen down on the coffee table and sank into the couch. For a few blessed minutes, there was only quiet. The faint hum of the city, the clink of her spoon against porcelain. Then there was a sharp knock at her door. Not the hesitant tap of a neighbor. The aggressive, repeated pounding of someone who believed they had the right to demand an audience. Zelia set down her mug, her heartbeat picking up again, and went to the door. She didn't have to look through the peephole to know who it was. She opened it. Tavarius stood in the hallway, still in his tailored suit, tie loosened, collar damp with sweat. His eyes were wild. "Zelia, what did you do?" he burst out. "Why aren't you answering your phone?" "Good evening to you, too," she said calmly. "Come in or shout in the hallway. Your choice." He glanced nervously at the neighbors' doors and stepped inside. She closed the door behind him. The calm of her penthouse contrasted sharply with the storm in his expression. Soft lighting, a neat living room, a faint scent of jasmine tea. "How could you cancel everything?" he demanded. "The caterer, the florist, the rentals. Do you have any idea what's happening over there right now?" "I can imagine," she said, walking back to the couch. People noticed that the woman they'd been happily billing for weeks isn't paying anymore. "The party is tonight," he yelled. "Guests are already arriving. The hors d'oeuvres aren't ready. Half the lights are off. The DJ is threatening to leave. Mother is having a panic attack." "Oh, so I guess she did want me there after all," Zelia murmured. "This isn't funny," he snapped. "You're sabotaging everything." She tilted her head. "Am I?" she asked. "Let's review. This morning you left early to help with preparations. This afternoon you texted me, your wife, who paid for all of it, that your mother didn't want me there. You told me to stay home like some ashamed secret." "That's not what he began. She picked up her phone from the coffee table, opened the message, and turned the screen toward him. The words stared back at him. "Mother doesn't want you here. Better if you stay at home." His mouth worked soundlessly for a moment. "That's not... You're twisting it," he said weakly. "I was trying to avoid drama. Mother was nervous. You know how she gets. I thought we could just talk later, smooth things over." "By erasing me from an event I paid for?" she asked. "In a house I paid for?" He threw up his hands. You said yourself you were tired, he said. I thought you'd be relieved. Besides, it's her house, her party. It is not her house, Zelia cut in, her voice suddenly sharp. He blinked. What? She set the phone down and folded her hands in her lap. The house is still in my name, she said. The deed hasn't been recorded to anyone else. The funds from my account were still sitting in escrow. So I called the bank. I called my lawyer. And I stopped the transfer. Tavarius stared at her as if she had spoken another language. You stopped it? He repeated. You mean? The money came back, she said. The closing attorney has been instructed not to release anything until further notice. Legally, that property is not owned free and clear by anyone. It's in limbo, just like your spine. His face flushed. You can't do that, he said. You can't just cancel a whole house because you're mad about a text. I didn't cancel a house, she replied. I canceled a very expensive lesson in how stupid I've been. He stepped closer, lowering his voice, as if proximity would make her understand. Do you have any idea how this looks? He hissed. All those people, Mother's friends, her club members. She told them this was her big moment, the housewarming of the year. Now everything is falling apart and they're all looking at us like we're a joke. Us? Zelia asked softly. They didn't even want me to show up, remember? He flinched. Z, baby. Listen, he said, his tone shifting, reaching for that soft place in her. We went too far, okay? Mother can be intense. But you know she's old. She doesn't mean half the things she says. You know I love you. We can fix this. Just call the bank. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Pay the vendors again. We'll explain to Mother. She'll apologize. Please. She studied him. He was good. He always had been. The wounded eyes, the gentle tone, the way he said we and us when he wanted something, and you when he blamed. A few months ago, she would have folded. Tonight, the anger in her chest was too clean, too bright. Tavarius, she said quietly. What was the plan? He paused. What plan? He asked. The one you and your mother discussed on the phone, she replied. The night before the final transfer, I heard you. You said, our plan is safe. You know what you have to do after that. What exactly was it you had to do after my money left my account? Color drained from his face. You were eavesdropping on my calls? He said. She laughed once, humorless. You were standing in the living room of the home I pay for, she said. You weren't exactly whispering. Don't change the subject. What was the plan, Tavarius? He shifted his weight, looking trapped. There was no plan, he stammered. Mother was just worried. She thought you might change your mind. I was just calming her down. By promising you'd do what you have to do once I'd paid in full, she finished for him. Was that before or after she started calling me a common woman who got lucky again? He ran a hand over his face. This is getting blown out of proportion, he muttered. You're emotional. You're making assumptions. I'm making connections, she said. I paid for everything. She ignored me, insulted me, and treated my money like an obligation. You kept telling me just this once while letting her drain my accounts. And the moment I paid the final installment, you told me I wasn't welcome in the house I bought. He didn't answer. The silence between them stretched. In it, Zelia saw the whole marriage with sudden, painful clarity. Every time he said, baby, just help me this one time. Every time he let his mother's words slide. Every time he chose peace with Eudora over respect for his wife. I used to think you were caught in the middle, she whispered. That you were just a good son who didn't know how to stand up to his mother. But there is no middle, is there? You chose a side. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. Do you still want my help? She asked. Is that why you came here? To convince me to pour more money into this spectacle? His jaw clenched. We need you to fix what you broke, he said. Mother's reputation is on the line. People will talk. They'll say we can't pay our bills, that we're broke. Do you want that? The irony nearly made her dizzy. "You were perfectly fine with people thinking I was nothing," she said. "Now you're worried what they'll think of you?" He spread his hands helplessly. "I'm begging you," he said. "We can sort out our issues later. Just don't embarrass my mother tonight." "I'm not the one who embarrassed her," Zelia replied. "She did that herself when she told her friends she was hosting a grand party in a house she doesn't even own, funded by a daughter-in-law she refuses to acknowledge." His eyes flashed. "So that's it?" he asked. "You're just going to sit here while everything burns?" She stood. "In case it's not clear," she said, her voice steady, "I'm done setting myself on fire to keep other people warm." He stared at her, breathing hard. "What about our marriage?" he demanded. "You're just going to throw that away too?" She looked at him for a long time. "Since you're so fond of contracts," she said softly, "you should understand this. I am withdrawing my investment, not from the house, from this marriage." His face went blank. You want a divorce?" he whispered. "That's something we'll discuss," she said, "with lawyers present. For now, you should go back to your mother's party, or whatever is left of it." "You can't be serious," he said. "Over one night? Over a text? You're going to destroy everything?" "I'm not destroying anything," she said. "I'm just refusing to fund my own disrespect." He shook his head in disbelief, walked to the door, then turned back. "You'll regret this," he said hoarsely. "You think money makes you powerful. You don't understand how this city works. People talk. They'll choose sides, and they will not be on yours." She smiled faintly. "We'll see," she said. "Drive safe, Tavarius. Enjoy the party." He slammed the door behind him. Zelia let out a long breath and sank back onto the couch. For a moment, the weight of what she'd done, what she'd started, pressed down on her. Then her phone began to ring again. She didn't pick up. She let it vibrate itself to exhaustion and eventually went still. In the silence that followed, she realized something. She was shaking. Yes. But for the first time in a very long time. She wasn't shaking from fear. She was shaking from the adrenaline of finally choosing herself. The fallout came faster than she expected. The next morning, Zelia woke to dozens of unread messages. Some were from Tavarius, fragmented apologies, angry demands, long paragraphs alternating between "you ruined everything and we can still fix this." Some were from unfamiliar numbers, vendors, the event planner, an indignant message from a floral designer accusing her of humiliating them in front of important guests by canceling payment. There were also screenshots from friends. Pictures of last night's party had already leaked into private group chats. A half-decorated ballroom with bare tables and no centerpieces. Guests standing around holding empty glasses. No food in sight. Eudora, in a gold gown, red-faced and shouting at a caterer who had simply shrugged and pointed to the unpaid invoice on his phone. In one shot, Tavarius stood off to the side, talking into his phone with a clenched jaw, while two women whispered behind their hands, smirking. Zelia scrolled through the images with detached calm. Her friend Kiana had added a caption to one, "Girl. I know this mess has your in-laws written all over it. Are you okay?" For the first time, instead of lying, Zelia typed the truth. "I'm better than I've been in years. I just stopped paying to be disrespected." Kiana replied with 10 fire emojis and "about time." Later that day, Zelia had her first official meeting with a family law attorney. Not the corporate one, not just Melvin's casual referral in the hallway, but a woman whose entire career was built around untangling marriages gone toxic. Her name was Attorney Briggs. She wore her hair in tight braids pulled into a bun and spoke with the calm, sharp authority of someone who had heard every possible excuse a cheating or manipulative spouse could make. "Let me guess," Briggs said after listening to the condensed version of events. "He's already trying to spin the narrative?" "How do you know?" Zelia asked. Briggs smirked. "Because they always do," she said. "Let me guess again. Now that he realizes you can pull the plug on the money, he's suddenly more affectionate. Keeps talking about us, about your shared future. Tries to blame his mother for everything. Zelia exhaled a shaky laugh. Something like that, she admitted. Briggs slid a notepad toward her. Write down everything, she said. Dates, amounts, comments, who said what. You may feel petty, but details win cases. And one more thing, stop having important conversations with him alone. If it's not in writing or in front of a witness, it didn't happen. Over the next few weeks, Zelia followed that advice. Tavarius tried every tactic. He sent flowers. She had building security send them back. He showed up at her office. She told the front desk she was unavailable and emailed him later, CCing her lawyer, suggesting all further communication go through counsel. He sent long, nostalgic texts about their early years together, about the way she used to look at him, about their dreams. In the middle of the paragraphs, he sprinkled in guilt. You're tearing this family apart over a misunderstanding. Mother is sick over this. Do you really want to be the cause? People at church are asking questions. I defended you. Why can't you defend me? She read them all. She replied to none of them directly. Briggs drafted a formal separation notice, serving it to him through proper channels. On the day he was officially served, he came to her building again, pounding on the lobby glass. Security didn't let him up. He texted her once more. So that's it? Papers? After everything I did for you? She stared at the words. Then she typed, You and your mother showed me exactly what I mean to you when you told me not to come to the house I paid for. I am simply adjusting my investments accordingly. She hit send. No reply came. The Tuxedo Park house became its own small legend. Without her money, the purchase fell through. The seller's agent, offended by the drama, refused to work with Eudora again unless she found another serious buyer. Word spread quietly through the high-end real estate circle that Mother Eudora and her son were difficult. In certain social circles, image was everything. Eudora's carefully curated persona, a woman of impeccable taste, always in control, had been cracked, and once cracks appear, people love to pry them wider. Some friends stopped inviting her to lunches, others still smiled to her face but whispered behind her back. What hurt Eudora most wasn't the failed house or the lost deposits. It was the loss of prestige. She attempted to call Zelia multiple times. Every time, her name lit up on the screen, unfamiliar now without mother-in-law attached. Zelia never answered. Once, a long message came through, voice trembling, halfway between an accusation and a plea. You humiliated me, Zelia, after everything I did for my son. Do you know what it's like to be laughed at in front of women I've known for 20 years? You made me look like a beggar who can't pay her bills. Is that what you wanted? Zelia listened to it once, then deleted it. She had spent years trying to earn that woman's approval. It felt almost surreal that now she felt nothing at all. Months later, the divorce mediator's office smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink. No courtroom drama this time. Both sides had been advised it was cheaper and smarter to settle quietly. Zelia sat on one side of the polished table, her lawyer beside her. Tavarius sat opposite, his own counsel at his elbow. He looked older, tired lines around his eyes, a stiffness in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. The mediator went through the numbers. Based on income, length of marriage, and contributions, Mrs. Collins Brooks is offering to split joint savings, transfer the car in your name fully to you, and waive any claim to your retirement accounts, the mediator summarized. In return, she keeps full ownership of her company and all business assets, and you both agree to walk away without spousal support in either direction. It's more than fair, Briggs murmured under her breath. Tavarius stared at the papers. After everything I did for her, he muttered, I supported her dreams. Briggs cleared her throat loudly. That's an interesting memory, she said. From what I've seen, her dreams were the ones financing everyone else's. The mediator glanced at her over his glasses. Let's keep commentary to a minimum, he said mildly. Tavarius's lawyer leaned toward him, whispering fiercely. After a moment, Tavarius exhaled and signed. He didn't look at Zelia as he pushed the papers back across the table. The mediator slid them to her. She took the pen, her hand steady, and signed her own name. Just like that, after years of sharing a bed, a mortgage, and a life, the legal bond snapped with a few strokes of ink. Outside, in the hallway, there was an awkward moment where they ended up walking in the same direction. "So," he said finally, shoving his hands in his pockets, "that's it." "That's it," she agreed. He looked at her, searching for something. Regret, maybe. A crack. "You really think you can do better than this?" he asked. "Than us?" She met his gaze, not with anger, but with a calm he hadn't seen in her before. "I already am," she said. He flinched as if she'd slapped him. "Goodbye, Tavarius," she added. "I hope one day you learn how to love someone without trying to own them." She turned and walked away. He didn't follow. Life after him wasn't instantly glamorous. It wasn't a movie montage of champagne and designer dresses. It was quieter, better. She moved out of the Midtown penthouse into a house she chose entirely for herself, in a neighborhood she liked, with a yard just big enough for a small garden. Not Tuxedo Park, not a monument to anyone's ego, just home. She hired a small team at work to help her scale her fashion export business into new markets. Without the constant drain of Eudora's demands and Tavarius's guilt trips, her accounts grew faster than ever. Sometimes she thought back to the night of the almost housewarming and pictured that enormous, echoing mansion filled with half-arranged flowers and angry vendors. It no longer hurt. If anything, it felt like a warning she'd narrowly escaped, a glimpse of a life where she would have been forever paying for someone else's fantasy. Instead, she took a different path. On weekends, she met with a financial coach who specialized in women who were first-generation wealthy, people like her father, and now, like her. They talked not just about investments, but about boundaries, about how money without boundaries becomes a trap. Her circle changed too. Some friends had only ever been drawn to her because she could pay the bill without flinching. When she stopped doing that, they drifted away. Good. The ones who remained were the ones who had called on the night she sent the wire back and said things like, "I'm proud of you. It's about time. Welcome back to yourself." One evening, sitting at her dining table with Kiana, going over sketches for a charity fashion event, Kiana asked, "If you could go back to that first day Tavarius asked you to buy his mother a house, would you change anything?" Zelia thought about it. "Honestly," she said, "no, because if I hadn't gone that far, I might never have woken up. I needed to see exactly how far they were willing to push me to finally stop letting them." She picked up a pen and circled a design she liked. "I can't change that I paid a painful tuition," she added, "but I can make sure I get my money's worth from the lesson." Kiana laughed. "That's the most CEO thing I've ever heard you say," she said. On the anniversary of her father's death, Zelia drove out to the small cemetery in Alabama where he was buried. She brought fresh flowers and a folded piece of paper. Sitting on the grass, she read the letter she'd written. "Papa, you told me to keep my money for the day I felt my ship was sinking. You didn't warn me that sometimes the people drilling holes in the boat would be the ones sitting closest to me. I want you to know, I finally patched the holes. I finally stepped away from the ones who tried to sink me while smiling. Your money helped, yes, but more than that, your words helped. I am no longer funding people who don't even want me in the room. I am no longer trying to buy love that was never for sale. You didn't just give me wealth. You gave me a way out, and I took it. Your stubborn, foolish daughter finally learned. I'm not lucky they chose me. They were lucky I chose them, and I won't make that mistake again. Love, Zelia." She placed the letter carefully under a stone and sat there until the sun dipped low and the air cooled. On the drive back to Atlanta, she rolled down the window and let the wind play with her hair. At a red light, her phone buzzed with a new notification. It was from a number she didn't have saved, but she recognized the pattern. "Hey, it's T. I heard about your new line. Looks like you're doing well. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime? Talk? No pressure." She stared at it for a moment. Then calmly, she blocked the number. The light turned green. She drove on, the city opening up before her, full of streets she hadn't walked yet. Once upon a time, a man had told her she would leave with nothing. Now she knew the truth. She left with everything that mattered: her name, her work, her power to say no, and a very clear understanding that the next time someone tried to build a mansion out of her money while keeping her outside the door, she'd be the one texting first. "Don't worry, I'm not coming. I don't want to be there.